Phenomenal Women Youth Commerce Chamber of Commerce of Industry, which is an organization that aims to promote and encourage female entrepreneurship. In 2018, I was recognized as the Young Woman of Achievement by the Free State Heroine Awards. And in addition to this, I have co-produced, co-presented, and co-directed a TV show that was aired nationally and awarded the Best Traditional TV Program by SATMA, which is popularly known as the South African and Traditional Music Awards. But today, I will be facilitating today's dialogue concerning African education. Without wasting any further time, I would like to introduce our first performance, which will be by the Qwaqwa Gospel Choir.
Mutu awela.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause. This is how we celebrate Africa Month at the University of the Free State. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Rabezi Mabine, and I'm also here to represent the Center for Graduate Support of the University of the Free State. And in line with the university's three-campus model, which aims to promote consistency and inclusivity on all the three campuses, and also in celebration of Africa Month, this dialogue started on the 23rd of May on the South Campus and continued on the 25th of May on the Bloemfontein campus. And today we are here to round off this thought-provoking yet educational discussion and reflect on this week's inputs. Without wasting any further time, I would like to bring up Mr. T. Manchu, who is the Vice Principal for Support Services on the Qwaqwa campus, and he will be doing the opening and welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to all of you. It is my singular pleasure and privilege to welcome amongst us some eminent citizens of our country and, of course, our continent. Allow me to welcome our Rector and Vice-Chancellor, Prof. Francis Peterson, in our midst. He is a regular and pleasant sight in most of the activities of our campus, and we want to thank him heartily for making time from his busy schedule to be with us today. Thank you, Prof, for coming. And I also, in the same breath, want to appreciate the presence of Prof. Koli Witun, who is our Vice Rector for Research and Internationalization, and of course, all the platform guests here present. Allow me to also acknowledge the presence of our eminent visitors from the university in Gabon. We really appreciate your presence. We are in the process of forging important international relations, and we are happy that we are making considerable and meaningful progress in that regard. And I am sure it is indeed and in keeping with this spirit of Africanism, if you will. So thank you for coming. I also want to acknowledge the presence of our scholars, our academics, our students, our performers, and indeed everybody who has made time to be with us today to make this day special. This has been a very special month in the history and of course in the calendar for our country, for our continent, and indeed the world. And especially this week, as the UFS, we have had the opportunity to make some critical reflections and have been able to celebrate our identity and, of course, our culture in different ways. And we do this sometimes through sports, through cultural activities, through artistic expression, but most importantly through dialogues that, such as the one that we are going to have today, where we take stock of where we come from, where we are, where we could have been, had it not been of the challenges that are facing us from time to time. So this is indeed a special day, and I would like to request you to afford an ear to most of the panel members who will be sharing their important thoughts with us today. May this day be all that you wish it to be, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy this day and welcome once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manchu. And in addition to that, I would just like to recognize the following panel members. Firstly, we have Mrs. Zolega Dokyana, who is the director of Kofsi Sport on the Qwaqwa campus. We have Dr. Sias Toteti, who is a senior lecturer at the University of the Free State Qwaqwa campus. I would also like to recognize Dr. Cornelius Hagenmeyer, who is the director of the Office of International Affairs. I would also like to recognize Mr. Teboho Khiba, who is a postgraduate student and staff member of the University of the Free State on the Bloemfontein campus, as well as Mr. Pula Mule, who is also a student on the Bloemfontein campus. They will be giving their abstract as well with regards to the topic. Our first speaker is then Mrs. Zoleka Dokywana. She holds a BA, Honours in Psychology. She obtained her master's degree from the University of Liverpool in the UK and a diploma in vocational guidance from the University of Reading, which is also based in the UK. She has been in higher education for more than 25 years as a lecturer, student counselor, residence head, academic support, director, and executive director in student affairs. She is passionate about adding value to students' personal growth and providing an environment conducive for such. Today, she will be touching on the importance of student engagement in African education at higher education institutions. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to acknowledge our Vice Chancellor, Prof, and the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, and all the other panel members. It is indeed an honor to be talking to you this afternoon about a topic that is quite close to my heart. I also happen to have been in Durban on the day the African Union was launched on the 25th of May. So when I got the invitation, I felt quite honored. I said, wow, history has got a way of repeating itself somehow. Yeah. My topic is on the importance of student engagement in African higher education. In many countries in Africa, most families live below the poverty line. Nelson Mandela believed that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. This statement followed a declaration encapsulated in the Freedom Charter promoting education by declaring that the doors of learning shall be opened to all. The sentiments provide a clear indication that for Africa to advance in development, education is the key to her success. One of the most precious human rights is the right to knowledge, which is the basis for growth both academically and personally. However, students will have a greater experience during their studies if they spend time and effort in both in and out of classroom activities at their disposal. Student engagement itself is an internationally recognized construct and provides an integrated understanding of student and institutional behaviors associated with student success. It refers to how much time and effort students spend on academic and other personal development activities, and it includes the way in which institutions allocate resources and organize learning opportunities and services to help students participate in and benefit from such activities. Understanding student experiences and performance has become increasingly important to restore public confidence in higher education. So student engagement is about understanding the holistic student experience in order to enhance the quality of teaching and learning on the one hand and the student experience on the other. It requires more than just participation, but the ability to make sense of and respond to the educational context. This implies that a multifaceted approach to understanding student engagement is necessary. Research indicates that there is a relationship between student engagement and success. According to Koo and Straydom, Koo 2009 and Straydom 2014 and 2015, institutional high impact practices, which are educational experiences that make a significant difference to student persistence, learning outcomes, and student success are the key propellers of student engagement. The research therefore implies that if Africa is to make any significant progress in joining the developed countries, the issue of student engagement must be taken seriously. According to Codes 2005, the following are the key comprehensive engagement issues: active and collaborative learning, participation in challenging academic activities, communication with academic staff, involvement in enriching educational experiences, feeling legitimate and supported by the university learning communities. Now, what kinds of challenges do institutions of higher learning experience in engaging students in a manner that will ensure that student success is realized? Firstly, we look at equity and participation. Higher education across African states is constrained by the participation rates that are dictated by funding. As the countries grapple with a range of issues, it becomes difficult to provide resources for higher education at the level that is required by the system. This is a phenomenon that also happens globally, not just in the continent. For the minority that makes it, institutions still struggle to provide an environment that promotes persistence. For example, in the South African schooling system, the schooling system produces over 200,000 qualifying students to compete for plus minus 60,000 spaces in the universities. Although the Freedom Charter espoused that the doors of learning shall be open to all, the availability of resources continue to dictate the number of students that can be absorbed. For instance, how many students apply for NSFAS funding, but not all of them do get, even though they qualify? One of the most precious human rights is the right to knowledge, which is basic for growth, both academically and personally. Through education, we can strive to make a positive impact on the society and its development. Educated people mainly drive meaningful progress. Therefore, access to education on a massive scale in Africa remains the only hope for her to rise and promote the much-needed development that was envisaged by our forebearers who initiated the Organization of African Unity in 1963. The second issue that is a challenge for institutions is the student experience. Students do not only have the right to education, but the right to education that will make them succeed. Both the individual and the institution should work together to make the process successful. The student experience encompasses all aspects of student living, from academic studies to social interactions and campus life. Student experience is important in ensuring successful outcomes and well-being. Universities across the globe are striving to provide a positive student experience through uncertain times. Higher education has its own beliefs, assumptions, and values. These sometimes differ from the individual students' ones. For example, in higher education, students are encouraged to argue their issues, whereas at home, if they argue with elders, that is viewed as a sign of disrespect. In promoting student engagement, such cultural clashes must be addressed to capacitate students who may be from such backgrounds to know that it is okay to do so within this space. For them to succeed, they must engage meaningfully. Although universities do provide orientation programs, including mentorship programs, adjustment may take a little while. It is critical that higher education institutions develop programs that are focused on adjustment in order to create a conducive environment for students to engage in both the academic and the social sphere. Another compounding factor in student experiences is the fact that due to the massification in higher education, numbers of commuter students increased as universities could not offer beds for all their students. The result is that a significant number of those students struggle to participate in on-campus activities. They are unable to interact with academics and other students. They struggle to have a sense of belonging with the institution, and they are alienated socially. The social alienation results in commuter students engaging academically at the expense of social engagement. The behavior defeats the purpose of producing well-rounded citizens, and they miss out on creating social networks that can assist them beyond their university life. How often do we get a situation if a student wants to get employment post their studies? They would have to have networks. It's standard. You get told you must know someone who's going to know someone who will be able to connect you for you to be able to get something. So to mitigate the situation, universities have introduced the concept of learning communities as a mechanism to promote participation and engagement. Research by Dryden and Goldstein, 2013, Jacobi, 2015, Jacobi and Gallant, 2004, Koo and others, has highlighted the following strategies that could be used to mitigate the issue of commuter students. Universities must make available living spaces for students to utilize in between classes. They must supply laundry facilities. They must provide access to computer labs. They must create spaces where educational activities can promote conversations among students. They must provide transport, and they also have to let students feel that they matter, and the university is taking an interest in their development. Sadly, funding for some universities remains a challenge in providing the needed resources. Although the African continent was at the forefront of ensuring social justice during the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, higher education had to quickly find mitigating solutions to ensure that there was continuity under challenging circumstances. Campus life was severely affected, and students had to adjust to studying at home for some time. This posed serious challenges as students had to learn through technology without the usual support they received through various in and out of classroom activities. However, this might be a paradox. However, the pandemic brought a sense of parity in terms of student experiences, as students were all in the same situation, whether they were commuter or residential students. The challenge institutions are facing is the provision of an equitable learning experience for all students, whether they reside on or off campus. Student success is also one of the challenges that beset the higher education. Improving student success is one of the key challenges facing higher education institutions around the world today. Universities in particular are seen as engine rooms of human expertise needed to drive the knowledge economy and the fourth industrial revolution. The following model of academic success represents the key aspects of students' academic success. This module was actually proposed by York, Gibson, and Rankin in 2015. They said student success happens in an environment where there's academic achievement, satisfaction, acquisition of skills, persistence, attainment of learning outcomes, and career success. The categories indicated can be used by academic advisors and student counselors to guide discussions in the event when students present with academic concerns. Student social success is the last one. Social success is propelled by a variety of issues. Students who are socially aware and responsible contribute to the well-being of their social and physical environment. The following are some of the facets of social success. Personal awareness and responsibility, building relationships, recognizing and appreciating different perspectives, critical and creative thinking, contributing to the community and caring for the environment, resolving problems, and valuing diversity. If we can be able to promote an environment where students can grow and be able to practice all of these, we can be on a path to a better nation and a better continent. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, student engagement is a critical aspect of the continent as a building block towards ensuring that through education, we can make a positive impact on the nations and their development. Although students engage across a diversity spectrum, much more can be achieved when students are enticed to leave homogeneous groups and reach across diversity. The continent can benefit a lot from promoting exchange programs for students because engagement with and across diversity not only contribute towards student success, but develops the psychosocial fabric of the nations. It is therefore important that universities across the continent have to focus their efforts on providing students with a meaningful student experience for them to engage in both the academic and the social sphere. I thank you.
For Africa to advance, education is the key to her success. And yet, most Africans still live in borderline poverty. So it means that there is still a lot of work to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, next we will have an artistic performance by the UFS Qwaqwa Campus Choir, curated by the Department of Arts and Culture.
Enough is enough to gender-based violence.
My Africa, my Africa.
I go by the name of Mthokozi Simfusi.
Kamo the growing seed.
Today we are here to talk about silence to gender-based violence. Silence, 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 which can be an ugly word. Silence, silence, which can make my heart to be heartbroken right now. Silence, silence, silence of the night, silence of the heart. Silence exists in the minds of hope. Silence is present in the world of individuals who are thinking of depression. Silence, it will always be silence, even the shyness have witnessed it. Silence is visible and invisible in the moment of the hymn. Silence of pastors before they start preaching. Silence is everywhere, which calls attention. Silence is power, which gives a sense of concentration. Silence will always be silence, even the shyness have witnessed it. Silence in the court of law to avoid harsh and disgusting noise. The silence that I'm writing about, every part of the world listen to it. Silence that can drown others to gender-based violence.
Hai Qwaqwa, hai bue. Ha ke na mantswe, ha ke na puo. Ke swabile nko ho feta molomo. Pele kwetse ka hara madi. Ke tswe ke thalatse kukwe dillo. Masea bana ba hweleditse sello. Selepe se iphile basadi sa menya. Setjhaba malapa a qhalana. Banna e ka ba pelo maikutlo a ile kae. Ha ile mona le qeta basadi se a isa lelapa. Le batla ho kotula difena ditholwana. E tlo ba motsana o jwang wa banna fela. La tjhaba la di dikela dipolao tsa nka sebaka ke mang a tlo tlisa mofuthu ka hara motlotlwana toni mo jalwang teng ya senyeha basadi tseba ha o matla kumeng ya tosi letsoho la ikutlwa matla la tlatlapa mokedikedi ke letsana ho theoha fahlong sa mosadi a mamella thathohatsi a re ke lerato nokana ya menyepetsi a gagi banna ho tonela selepe se qhitsa madi bana ba shebile mmabona a qhitsa madi mosadi a lenya le kolobe bakeng sa bana ana banna le batla ho jala peo e jwang.
Sisters and brothers, fathers and mothers, chiefs and council, teachers and masters, let the world combine and establish paramount vision and mission and eliminate the clouds of silence. Enough is enough. My Africa.
My Africa.
It seems like there was a change in the program. That was a poetry item by the students on the Qwaqwa campus, curated by the Department of Arts and Culture. Next up, we have Mr. Khiba Tebuo, who is a junior lecturer and postgraduate student in the Department of Sociology at the University of the Free State. He holds an honors degree in sociology, a postgraduate certificate in teaching popularly known as a PGCE, and is currently enrolled for a master's degree in social sciences specializing in sociology. As you can tell, this man wears many hats, but today he will be talking about the potential of the African knowledge systems in perpetuating a harmonized African higher education system. Over to you.
Let me first by acknowledging Prof. and Mr. Manchu, our host, colleagues, our students, our distinguished guests, and everyone who's in this assembly tonight. I've been tasked to talk about my paper, which has been explained, but what I'm just going to share with you is the message of the paper and the overview of it. Let me enter this conversation by first acknowledging that in this time that we are busy celebrating our African diversity, our identity, and so on, it is important for us to remember back where we're coming from so that we can inform the future that we are going in. And by the future, I mean the future generation, the future scholarships, and everything that is involved, especially in higher education. And by the past, I mean having to recognize our indigenous knowledge practices that have been for a long time been deliberately scrapped or have not been given enough time in mainstream scholarship. And what I would like to say is that now it is a good time for us to bring this conversation back into the picture, and I hope, Prof, that this will go beyond just this event, because I know that sometimes we get into the habit of talking about these things, and the implementation must be follow-up of this. And we will all contribute in all our ways, and that's actually the first plea that I have with everyone that is listening and that is watching us tonight and today. And I just want to start by saying that our institutions from the colonial era have, not deliberately so, but have neglected the indigenous people, their knowledge, their language and practices for a long time. And that must be an issue. And if it's not an issue, then you must realize that there are so many things that we are suffering and are going wrong in our institutions today that we need to bring and make sure that we implement steps that need to correct that. And we know that there's been models that have been destroyed. We know that at some point our traditional practices have been excluded from much of the scholarship that it is there in Africa. And that's one of the things that we must address moving forward to make sure that we are included. And let me make this clear. This is not to say there must be an exclusion of Western hegemony. No, we are calling for an equal footing in the production of knowledge, because we do have our knowledge system, we do have our practices. They need to take center stage the same way that there was a deliberate program to put in Western knowledge into the African continent. This is our African continent, and we must remind each and everyone that our knowledge systems and practices matter as much as everyone else. And that will bring me to my next point to say, our benchmarks of intelligence, capacity, and all of that must not be based on Western standards of intelligence at all. We have our own models of standards and everything. And they've been there before. They've been there before. People have been there sharing knowledge and all sorts of things. It must be time that we remind everyone of who we are and make sure that when we move forward in such conversations, those things are considered in moving and making sure that we have a prosperous higher education. In this country, we know we have a lot of problems with our institution, and not just higher education, starting from basic education moving up to here. And if we are gonna actually produce graduates that can compete globally, they must first know who they are and where they are coming from. And just to make sure that everyone understands, I know that Prof, our institution came with many initiatives, even if in our departments, in terms of advancing the call for decolonization. There's been changing programs, there's been changing what you call our module guides and everything to make sure that there's space, there's center for African knowledge. And with that, I do applaud the university, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done moving forward. I just wanted to emphasize that I'm not here to fight with you. So we need to establish our own centers of knowledge. We need to establish our own, if it needs to be practical sense, whether it's our published company, materials and everything, that resonates to African students, that talk to the African realities of students, that talk to the experiences and what are students going through on a daily basis. In that way, we actually gonna bring the gap closer in terms of making sure that whatever students that they are learning in the classroom can be applied in real life context, especially us who are sociologists. Normally, application is one of the most important things, and there's that gap whereby the education that students are getting and what is going on around in their world, sometimes there's a misdirection whereby students can't take the knowledge that they are being taught and apply it to real life, because those two things, sometimes they don't go together. You might find a situation where students are taught about something else and what they are seeing else in society is different. So we must bring that to make sure that whatever it is happening in our countries, in our African countries and everything, that all of that will come into play. In so doing, we share the experiences, we share the knowledge that will further contribute in the African unity, which is a big thing now with all that is happening with migration and all of those talks that are happening. So just to conclude everything, I would like to say that we should never stop calling for African unity. We should never stop calling for change. We should never stop for transformation that we want to see, because if then it is not done, then we are done. And by so doing, I conclude. Thank you.
It is important that Africans are taught in a way that speaks to their experiences and realities. African education must speak to the African context. Thank you for that, Mr. Khiba. Next, we have Mr. Pula Mule. While I was reading his abstract, something stood out for me, and I would like to highlight on it. He says, "We are the generation that is comfortable with creating platforms of conversation. Let us use those to further develop and see ourselves beyond the physical lens of color, borders, language, and ethnicity." And it is very difficult in these conversations to shy away from these terms such as color, terms such as ethnicity, and so on. So anyway, this speaker is an outstanding individual, and here is why. Pula Mula is a final year LLB student at the University of the Free State, and yet he is an intern at SAGE South Africa. He is a debate coach at the University of the Free State Debate Society, a speech and dialogue coach at UNISI School Bloemfontein. He is currently a Pan-African Universities Debate Championships quarter-finalist, a Battleground Pro-AM champion, and a second-best speaker among many accolades. His current academic research is on the role of non-binary text in the law and the development of non-gendered language. And today he will be talking about the modernity and idealism of Africa. Over to you, sir.
Good day, everyone. As already announced, my name is Pula Mula. Having to speak after an academic, as an aspiring academic, it's quite intense. I'll do my best. Firstly, my conversation is really about African education, modernity, and idealisms. Significantly speaks about the ways in which we should visualize African education and the emancipation of African education while also celebrating the efforts already made. It starts as follows. The African landscape has for far too long been deemed archaic, ancient in history, and lost in the 20th century. This has been perpetuated by years of disenfranchisement, a downward look on Africa's ability to grow and develop, as well as the inherent biases that education in Africa is subpar to the rest of the world. This has been ever so evident through the development of education in African countries that are struggling, the establishment of state-of-the-art institutions that not only allow access to higher education, but also offer competing technologies around any other form consideration. A large part of this has been premised on Eurocentric thought, the fact that a lot of African countries in existence lack social, cultural, and legal frameworks that are sustainable and allow for development. What's important here is that we can realize the establishment of African communities and state-of-the-art institutions that still allow for us to develop. This looks like the EAC, Arab Maghreb Union, the economic communities of Central African states, the development and common market of Eastern and Southern Africa, or SADC as well. For the most part, we have over 1,225 institutions in Africa, but most of them has been deemed as inherently not very inclusive. Why this exists is because our cultures, our communities, and our governments and citizens have a shared role that they need to play, the role in which unification needs to be allowing for the African thought to prevail. And interestingly, this all goes, as already shared, beyond the borders of shades of skin color, languages, and ideologies, but is a representation that we inherently need Africans to come together to ward off the past and represent our own individual identities. Moreover, this is very important to realize that it's almost impossible to assume that our rainbow nation is merely on the crux of those who namely exist within the University of the Free State, Qwaqwa, Bloemfontein, or the general frame of South Africa. But the diverse nature of knowledge systems, something that already been alluded by Mr. Khiba, is that there's a prolific need for us to realize this African higher education authors, innovators, and individuals who have created new theories and grandstanding celebrations of these communities that we think are important. These many different terminologies and ideologies are very easy to emancipate and look at, but the reflection of them, like Black consciousness, Pan-Africanism, liberties such as freedom and unity, Uhuru na Umoja, Ubuntu, are a reflection of what we are, and not only just words and terminologies that exist within textbooks, but the realization that the development of higher education exists within confines of those who understand it and those who think is important, something that the colonizers pickpocketed from us, but they can't do it anymore. The starting point for evaluating a lot of these considerations while looking at individuals who have been great, like Valentine Yves Mudimbe, was shaped features of philosophy, a counter-narrative to the idea that South Africa or Africa has been archaic in nature, and through his book, The Invention of Africa. What's inherently important all these societal differences is that we need to realize that information and education has not only been premised on who can speak better, but who has the ability for them to realize ourselves within these confines of society. Notably, the road to a brighter tomorrow, which is very important, need not end there. Junifer Uwa from the University of British Columbia suggests, a bit more in the Kenyan context, but we can learn from this analysis, is to say that the best approximation to dealing with sustainable development in school curricula is to realize our local capacities under indigenous ideas and integrating them with formal education. It's very rare for you to hear Ubuntu in class, but more importantly, it's very difficult for you to realize it, especially within the confines of knowledge. UFS Faculty of Law requires an overview of historic and value-centered knowledge with every module. This is worth celebrating, especially in the confines of African education, because this means that there is an inherent need for us to realize these concepts within the very frames in which we exist in, through academics, through students, and through institutions of higher learning. A once imminent tool to colonize African child is one best represented by critical thought and the evaluation of intrinsic capacities. We think this only exists within those who are able to speak and all those who are able to regard certain considerations of society. Lastly, as we constantly prompting to realize our positions in academic spaces, the privilege that the lottery of birth has given us, our realization of what we aspire to have and not to be, the role we play in grander features of society and community of higher education, one cannot wander very far off from the crevices of what allows for us to share, but not have an overlook of our education system. It's very easy to say African education system is subpar, but if you realize the academics in this room, you'll most likely realize that it goes beyond just those ideas and considerations. There's sufficient response to create, and I guess this recommendation, to create and enhance Africa-centered harmony in ideology and higher education is for us to not look at Africa and the ancestry of Africa as failing, but also realizing that we have the ability for us to get back. The swords of today are not bronze and silver, but are words in collaboration, patriotism, and Botu. Let us not wallow in the feats we have created and neglect the shortcomings. Yes, it is wise to be awake to the fact that resource shortages, capital flight, and less affluent states are things that probably do exist and probably things that we think are inherently terrible. However, Pule implores you, myself, states, leaders, activists, to create strategies that will not only rival those of larger economies and states, but strategies that the African child can best relate to and best protect them, hone them, and equip them with enough capacities to make them successful, while embodying the reality, namely that Africa higher education ought to live within us for a very long time. We are the generation that is comfortable with creating platforms and conversations. Let us not, for those, further develop and see ourselves not through the lens of physical borders and color and language and ethnicity, but every day as you walk, as you learn, as you engage with various individuals and our realities, be cognizant of Africa Day not being a day in which we rock our traditional attire and emulate the coming together of Africans, but as a step to reflect, rejoice, and remember that we are the sum of our efforts, that being Africa goes beyond what we can see, but rather what we embody. Thank you.
Although there is still a lot that needs to be done in terms of African education, let us not ignore and forget to celebrate the strides that have already been made in terms of this ideal. Thank you, Mr. Mula. Our next speaker served at the Stellenbosch University for 12 years, through which she was an academic, a lecturer, and later appointed the Vice Dean in the Faculty of Agri-Sciences. In 2011, she joined the UFS as a professor and Vice Dean in the Faculty of Natural and Agricultural Sciences. She is now the Vice Rector of Research and Internationalization. In other words, she's my boss's boss. Her research focus is on food microbiology, and she is still actively involved in research. She is an NRF C2 rated scientist who has published more than 60 international articles in peer-reviewed journals, and the list goes on. Prof. Kohli, I'm sure that everyone here is eager to hear what your thoughts are in terms of the development of young academics through African university collaboration. Please help me welcome Prof. Kohli.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, and I acknowledge all of the panel members. It's good to share this stage with you this afternoon. Before we walked in, we were laughing and saying, can you believe it that on Africa Day celebrations here in Qwaqwa, we are working with an African partner to see how we can do staff exchange, student exchange. So I'd like to say a special word of welcome to Professor Alain Souza, who is the Vice Rector of the University of Science and Technology, Masuka, in Gabon, and his colleague, Mr. Abbas Assoui, who's the External Relations Manager at the same university. Colleagues, it's fantastic to have you here. They have visited our campus for the past week. We're looking at collaboration, and we will join them in Gabon, hopefully at the end of July, to from our side see how we can cement the collaboration. I was asked to talk about the development of young academics, and you'll excuse me if I speak from the heart, because it's really been something that I've been involved with for a long time, developing young people and making sure that they're successful in this complex world that we call academic life. is something that is very close to my heart. If we want to address academic capacity development on our beloved continent, we have to develop young academics who are able to become world-leading professors. The world-leading professors of tomorrow is what we should aim for. Those who have doctorate degrees at the age around 30, it takes a long time to build an academic career, who has the potential to become the professors and the thought leaders of the future, should be guided through this complex world of universities. The UFS has got an experience of more than a decade in developing young academics. We started out with the Prestige Scholars Program, which is now called the Future Professors Program, and this program has been very successful in making sure that we support young academics to reach their academic goals. So one of the first things that we do in this program is to make sure that academics have a sustained intellectual project. So what we are working on makes sense now and also in 5 years' time and in 10 years' time. We also want to make sure that that intellectual project has gravitas in terms of who's interested in it. We want to make sure that young academics work on projects that is relevant not just regionally is important, but also internationally. I always use the analogy of saying we want to play the research game in a local stadium, but we want international people to be in that audience and in that crowd that supports the game. Building international networks is another important thing that we work on with young academics. So the questions we ask here are, who are the leaders in your field? Who are the champions in your field? Where are they publishing? What are they working on and what methods are they using? So it's important that we know our field that we're interested in, but also the academics who play in that field. And that's a first step in really building international networks. For those international networks, we don't always want to look to the global north. We don't always want to look to Europe and America. Here we've got some colleagues from our continent who are playing leadership roles right here on our continent. We want to make sure that there is collaboration between us and these world leaders on our continent, and I can give you many examples. We also try and encourage young academics to focus on high quality of research outputs, so those books, chapters in books and journals, to be in internationally recognized publications and book producers. And those outputs must be acknowledged in your field. People must notice what you write. Because there is so much in this field, quality is an important focus. Many universities on our continent are developing teaching and learning focuses. But we've seen in many universities, although there's areas of research excellence, there's still a lot to be done in terms of staff development and ensuring that these academic staff members have their PhDs. Unfortunately, quite a large proportion of academics in African universities don't have PhDs. So an average of around 40% in many of the universities on our continent. And we really need to work on that. And I think that's part of the collaboration that we're trying to establish with Gabon in the coming months. If the importance of doctoral degrees is because without a doctoral degree, it has an impact on the research outputs. So with a PhD, one can produce, of course, more research outputs, and also you can supervise doctoral students, which is really important for universities. Intra-Africa university collaboration can assist in developing young academics and specifically develop provide support or supervision for these staff members to obtain their PhDs. We could possibly explore developing tailor-made doctoral programs And this is some of the things that we're also talking to with our Gabon friends, where we could take a blended approach. Supervision doesn't always have to be face-to-face. There's many opportunities that COVID has shown us that this could be done remotely via email, Zoom, Teams. We've all got to know these platforms quite well in the last 2 years. I'd like to use the example of Professor Marijke Labuschagne, who's a Sachi Chair in diseases of field crops on Bloemfontein campus. She collaborates with many researchers on the continent, and the arrangement is that they do the fieldwork in their countries of origin and then come and spend time with her in writing up the thesis and managing and working through the data. So that seems to be a really good approach and a good way of doing a blended PhD. In closing, colleagues, I'm not going to keep you busy for long. I think the prospect of collaboration in academic staff development within our continent could be beneficial to the UFS and to our partners on the continent. We have to work in collaboration across the continent. We can all benefit from it, and that is how higher education institutions will accelerate their development and their global impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Kohli. Our next speaker is Dr. Sias Zodedzi. He is a senior lecturer and assistant dean in the Faculty of Education on the Qwaqwa campus of the University of the Free State. He has 19 co-authored research articles as well as 7 conference papers. He has supervised 2 completion, 5 PhDs, 9 masters, and 10 honor students. He has received awards from the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning as well as the research committees for his research and academic scholastic performance. He is a member of various committees of the Faculty of Education Academic Advisory Board and the Committee for Title Registration. And today, he will be addressing the matters of leveraging African collaboration for internationalization branches of rural-based university branch campuses. Over to you.
Thank you, Program Director, to the Rector and the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kohli. I don't know why am I speaking after you. Maybe we'll correct that in future. And then as well as Dr. Cornelius, because I'm in his space in any what I'm going to present, it's basically from his space, the issue of internationalization. And my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I have been requested to give a presentation on leveraging African collaborations for internationalization of rural-based university campuses. As you can see, this topic is really a complex one because it's basically looking at a rural-based university campus rather than rural-based universities. However, it should be a travesty of these proceedings if we are to pitch this presentation really at this micro level. Rather, reference to African universities will be more appropriate. Whether urban or it's rural, main or branch campuses, internationalization of higher education in Africa is not wholly different. It's just the same regardless of the space. There are a lot of characteristics that are uniquely African, especially in as far as leveraging African collaborations is concerned. Then I will, first of all, just recap on internationalization as Professor Kohli has already indicated. Then I'll actually borrow from DeVet and Hunter 2015, where the definition goes as follows. It is actually the intentional process of integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purpose, functions, and delivery of post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff and to make meaningful contribution to society. Now, with that in mind, the question becomes now, what has been the role of African universities? Was it intentional or was it something that occurred based on what the literature currently offers? Now, this actually, the reality is from the literature point of view. Internationalization of African universities has undergone various stages of metamorphosis. Dominantly, it has begun from a mere service point of view, where the demand for higher education by students from neighboring countries have actually crossed to South Africa to look for higher education opportunities. That has, for some time, been the issue that has been, especially for rural-based universities. They've actually been getting students basically based on the fact that they are looking for higher education opportunities. So if even universities that are based in urban areas are struggling, therefore there is a need or an intentional move to have rural-based universities also attracting students in a more intentional way rather than just a mere service. Now, if we speak of integrating this intentional, intercultural or global dimension into the purpose, function, and delivery of post-secondary education, what role has Africa played in this regard? Now, as Defera says in 2019, says the weakest global higher education system has been that Africa really relies heavily on the discourses, on the paradigms and parameters set by others. In that way, that actually renders Africa to be vulnerable to global whims and habits. Hence, its contribution to what constitutes international may just be least minute or at worst just non-existent, except the recent initiatives that are actually taking place, including what the UFS is actually doing. At the end, the intentional or international in the African context may just be seen as more colonial subject matters assimilated or adapted to Africa. Therefore, more still needs to be done in this regard. In Africa, international partnerships still reflect old colonial ties, whereby former French colonies have partnerships with universities in France, and to a lesser extent, the same can be said about former British colonies. Continentally, the European Union is a major facilitator of African-European university partnerships. The US is also making significant strides or headways in its partnership with African universities. Therefore, partnerships between African universities are very few, to be honest, at this stage. More still needs to be done in this regard. And in most cases, there is lack of substance where there are such partnerships beyond signing the MOUs, meaning that more still needs to be done. There is also a commitment and also a need to increase the African partnership footprints by many universities in Africa. This stems from the understanding of the benefits of virtue that are likely to arise out of such partnerships. However, for African partnerships to flourish, that may require a huge dedication of not readily available resources. More resources need to be put into that. Therefore, for rural-based universities or campuses, the following benefits can be achieved if that can actually be a targeted initiative. Number one, the geographical proximity. Most of the students that are actually approaching the rural-based campuses, that may include Univen, that may also include the Qwaqwa campus, you'll find that they are actually from the countries that are actually near those campuses. Secondly, the other benefit that we may have is actually diversity boon, whereby we've got a diverse population of students, a diverse group of academics as well. And then lastly, with the collaborations that we may have, they may also breed other collaborations. By so saying, I'm saying let's all celebrate Africa Month. Program Director, thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly.
Collaborations among African universities are still low. This calls for African universities to dedicate more time and resources to formalizing these kinds of collaborations. Thank you for that, Dr. Zodezi. I don't think our next speaker needs an introduction, does he? Our next speaker is Prof. Francis Peterson, who will be doing a recap and overview of the African Education Dialogue. Prof. Francis is the Rector and Vice-Chancellor of the University of the Free State. He was previously the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. And among his many successes of serving in higher education, he has also served in the private sector as Executive Head Strategy at Anglo-American Platinum, Executive Vice President, Research and Development at Mintech, among others. He is a highly skilled man as he serves on various national and international technical, editorial, and advisory committees. He is actively involved and has consulted widely to the South African engineering and built environment industries. He has also published more than 160 papers in international journals and conference proceedings. Today, as I said, Prof. Francis will be doing then a recap and overview of the African Education Dialogue that has been held at the different campuses over the duration of the week. Over to you, Prof.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Program Director. And it's really for me a great pleasure to be here. I would have liked to have been on the Qwaqwa campus. I just look at the outside and it's so beautiful. And I can just imagine sitting on the Qwaqwa campus and just look to the outside region of Qwaqwa, which is so beautiful. But let me also echo the words of Prof. Corley to recognize our guests from the Masuku University in Gabon, Vice Rector Sousa, and also Mr. Ausi, which is the External Relations Manager. Great to have you in the audience. And I hope that if you have spent the last week already here, that I hope it was a fantastic week and that you had some beautiful collaborations and engagements that we could take forward in some of the future engagements. I also would like, at the beginning, want to pay tribute to Mr. Cornelius Haugenmeier and also his staff, which is across all of the different campuses, for putting such a beautiful, fantastic, well-designed, well-thought-through program together to celebrate. In fact, we got Africa Month, but we celebrate Africa Week, and it's fantastic to have seen what played out at the different campuses. So I think we should give him also a hand of applause. Well done. And as the program director have indicated, my task is really just to summarize what has played out this week on our three campuses, and it's important that although the focus has been on education and education in Africa, and that's education at different levels, basic education, secondary education, higher education, it's also have been focused on what are the levers that we need to pull to ensure that the 54 countries on the continent is working in more unison, that African unity that we're talking about. I believe that the activities that we engaged on over the last couple of days during this week has been to celebrate what Africa has to offer, to critically engage on some of the issues, some of the challenges, to be able to debate on specific issues, which is always fantastic, because I do think that out of debate we generate new thinking, new thoughts that we can take forward, and then also to indicate through either poetry, through readings, through performances, artistic performances, we also celebrate what Africa is all about, what each of us could play in relation to Africa, but also what Africa can offer to the world. And that is what I've seen over the last couple of days that played out on our three campuses. So my task is in fact to bring them together. And in the way that I want to bring together, I want to focus on how it actually chronologically played out. It started off on our South Campus in Bloemfontein, where we had the South Campus principal, Dr. Madiope, could not be there, but a speech were presented by Ms. Poloko Masulele, and she in fact, probably she and Maria talk about the whole issue of nutrition and to what extent nutrition impact education on the continent, and that we must never forget about that. You know, often impacts basic education, but it can be pulled through through other stages of education. And she referred to that we should develop policies, but also actions that could speak to the whole issue of feeding, healing, and teaching our people. And that was the message that she brought across. Then we also had a representative from the Free State Department of Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation, Ms. Zola Tamai. And she actually emphasized three things. She emphasized the whole issue of collaboration. And you've picked up collaboration as part of internationalization, as part of institutions that should talk to one another as a collective to be able to make a greater impact. And she said that the university should be more working with government to see to what extent we can do things that impact society. She in fact also says that we mustn't forget that government is also a good and an excellent provider of employment towards our graduates that go out. And specifically in the context of South Africa and also other African countries where our unemployment is quite high, we need to make sure that those collaborations also yield that positive outcome. But she also made a final point, and that was a point in relation to mother tongue education. She said that our in terms of if we write and if we want to add to literature, try to add to literature in your mother tongue. She made the statement that English literature is already saturated, and there's a lot of opportunities for mother tongue expression in terms of literature. I also made a few points on the South Campus, and I was more emphasizing the aspects of what the colonial history has done to the continent in terms of oppression, in terms of slavery, even before that, inequality resulted in division, and what impact that actually had on education. And specifically, later on I will refer to it, not on the South Campus, but something that came out Wednesday when we discussed it at the Bloemfontein campus, to what extent those deeds of oppression, so to speak, or influences have an impact on the confidence level of children and people that graduated from the continent. But in a debate such as this, in a discussion such as this, we mustn't always refer. We should refer to that, but we mustn't stay there. The challenges that we had, like COVID-19, that have created an opportunity for us to pause, to reflect. It also provides an opportunity for us to reimagine, to be creative, to be innovative. And I think it is important for us, if we are creative, innovative, reimagining what we need to do, what is those things that we could then convert into actions, so that we don't always say, this is what we have gone through, but through that time of pause, how we actually could move forward. There was also a presentation by Professor Lynette Jacobs, or Jacobs, on the South Campus, where she pointed out that the decades of colonization and colonial education did little to build the self-esteem of African scholars. And I have already mentioned that point. But she also, therefore, stressed the importance of decolonized the curriculum. And I appreciated the comments that you made in terms of the work that we are doing on decolonization of the curriculum. But I also agree with you that there's much more that we need to do. And it's that journey that we should do collectively, because decolonization is an opportunity to bring the voices that were on the periphery into the curriculum and say, but to what extent can it and should it add more value? Then we had Professor Colin Chasey. He's the director of the Unit for Institutional Change and Social Justice. And he talked about the whole concept of Ubuntu, and I think we're all familiar with that concept. But he reminded us that whatever we do in the actions, we should not do that alone. That as African nations, we can only succeed as a collective. And I think what pulls through there again is the whole issue of collaboration, of engagement, of partnerships that are quite important. Then on Wednesday, those discussions were taken forward on the Bloemfontein platform, and we had the director of a Centre of Graduate Support, Professor Witness Mutsi. He gave us a fantastic, I would say, historical representation of the African education system, and that was now even before colonial days. And that he pulled through, and he in fact also made the same point, that in a post-colonial Africa, we should merge aspects of both traditional and Western education in order to properly respond to the needs of society. So it's not one or the other, it's not throwing out one and replacing the other one. It's in fact, how can we work together in a complementary way to be able to deal with the issues of society. And then we had one of our research fellows, Dr. Samia Chasey. She's now with the International Education Association of South Africa, IASA. And she argued for a more harmonized system of education within the African continent. And we all know that is not that easy. But if you talk about mobility, if you talk about credit sharing and credit recognition, you have to harmonize that system more. And there are various studies that she pointed out that it's currently happening on the continent to be able to do so. And I think it's important that we look at it. It's probably going to be much more slower. I think a lot of the collaboration is much more easier to do at a postgraduate level, at the research level. But we also need to put a lot of effort in that. It might have been Cornelius that have indicated in that debate on Wednesday that although we have increased our number of collaborations, as not only as the University of the Free State, but probably as the 26 South African universities as a collective, the percentage of collaboration is still very, very low compared to our collaborations with the global north. And I think that is something that we need to work on. And in fact, that brings me to Cornelius's, because he was part of the panel. He, in fact, emphasized the whole issue of African higher education partnership and student exchanges, and how that could help us to contribute to African unity. He also elucidated on the use of indigenous knowledge systems and how we could use that more to be able to learn from one another. And I will make a point towards the end in terms of different knowledge systems and how we should use it more actively. And the whole emphasis of equal focus on how we partner with our partners on the continent, that our aim should be to foster ethical and equal partnerships underscored by a strong value foundation infused with the principles of Ubuntu. And I would advise you, these conversations are recorded, to go and listen to what Cornelius have said, because I'm just sort of summarizing it now, but there was a very deep reflection of what that strong value foundation actually means when we're talking about partnering with other universities, and specific with the universities on the continent. And then I sort of made the point referring to an old African proverb that say that if you want to move mountains tomorrow, you should start gathering the stones or moving the stones today. And I was trying to understand or unpack a little bit what those stones are. And I referred to internationalization, referred to collaboration, and we all heard about this. I also add in collaboration the whole issue of co-creation, because co-creation, in fact, takes collaboration to a next level. That we, and Prof. Corley referred to that earlier, how can we design curricula together? How can we offer curricula together? And that's also a mechanism of bringing the global north and the global south, or the African continent, much closer to one another, where scholars on the African continent and scholars in the global north could work and present curricula together to students both on the African continent and students in the global north. And I also then talk about digitalization. We know how technology has been enhanced through COVID-19, and how do we do that, but in a responsible manner. Because we also know that if you don't have the appropriate connectivity, the devices, the bandwidth, that your digitalization and technology enhancement can actually be used to broaden the divide, and we need to be careful how we do that. And then I also said that whatever we do, we always would do it to the best of our ability. I use the word excellence, and I don't know whether it was. I might just go back to the to what I said a little bit earlier on excellence, but whether it was Tabor or whether it was Spule that talk about how do we define excellence? How do we define what we do in terms of excellence on the continent or in the country compared to global understanding of excellence? And I don't want to open up that debate and discussion. We could have a big discussion, a last discussion on that. But for me, it is how do you contribute the best of your ability? And as Prof. Corley have indicated, how can you play the game to the best of your ability, knowing that the spectators is an international audience, and we need to reflect on that. So program director, for me is those were the things that came out on the South Campus, on the Bloemfontein campus, and then obviously what we heard today in terms of the debates, the discussion, specifically about student success, and I can just say and you should know that, because there's also obviously students and academic staff, we're probably one of the leaders in the country on understanding student success. We were invited by International Foundation to submit a very large proposal to link student success and employability with one another, and we were the only university that in South Africa that were invited to participate in that. So student success is crucial, but student success from our university perspective is often been seen, and we drive that narrative that it is about social justice. It's a social justice imperative. We can't have students coming to our campuses and not succeed. And in that success, it is a partnership between the institution and the student. So in the partnership, both people and both entities bring their support to that. So that's fantastic. Cordy talked about how do we develop excellent academics, how do we develop the next generation of academics, and not only in the University of the Free State, but in South Africa and on the continent. And I think the partnerships is about that. And academics that we could keep on the continent. You know, we do lose a lot of academics to other parts of the globe, and we need to have programs anticipating there is always going to be a certain amount of erosion in that program, so that we must continuously working on. And if you start to partner, that becomes quite important. And then I think SIAS, when we're talking about a university where we have parts of the university that is in a rural setting, and how do we recognize that, but also in that recognition, learn from it to build not only a better graduate, but also that other parts of the university bring in the fundamental values that we talked about and the challenges that the rural component of a university has to be able to strengthen programs across the whole university. And ultimately, for me, what this week, and I'm looking at Cornelius and the program director, we will have an opportunity to reflect again on what came out. But for me, it's a realization what we have in the institution, what we have as an institution, what we have through our partnerships, and what we need to do to be able not to only play our role in building a better, a stronger, a more sustainable education system on the continent, and what our role is in that, but also to see to what extent we can project through the unity that, and as a collective that we have, what Africa can offer to the world. And that is the action that I have extracted out of our debates and our discussions, and it provides us renewed energy to go forward. So I encourage you to listen or re-listen to the conversations. You can follow the links on the University of the Free State websites, and to use this opportunity also to reflect. We often, and that's my last remark, program director, we often are so in a rush to complete things, to just try to solve issues, that we often don't have the time to just pause and to reflect. Because most of the effective solutions you might already have, but you are so in a rush that you miss that. And I think this opportunity this week has just reminded us again to pause, to reflect, to see what we can do better, but also to have listened what we can do more. So thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Prof. Peterson, for that reflective piece. I'm almost tempted to say we actually need to take a moment of silence and take everything in, because it was so informative. Next, we will have an artistic performance by the UFS Qwaqwa Campus Choir, curated by the Department of Arts and Culture. Can you please give them a round of applause as they make their way to the stage?
Di
Hala, la UFS, hala, la. Hala, la Qwaqwa campus, hala, la. One thing about the University of the Free State, we are not only an academic university, but we also promote arts and culture. That was a beautiful artistic expression. Please give them another round of applause. As we close off, we will have Dr. Cornelius Hagenmeyer, who will do the closing remarks. Dr. Hagenmeyer is the director of the Office for International Affairs. Hala, la. He obtained his qualification to be appointable as a judge in Germany before settling in South Africa in 2002. He holds a South African LLB degree obtained at UNISA and a South African LLM degree from the University of Cape Town. In 2021, he was awarded a PhD degree by the University of Cape Town. He is a non-practicing attorney of the High Court of South Africa, and today he will be reflecting on the African Education Dialogue, and he will give his closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Hagenmeyer.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief today because Professor Peterson has already done a brilliant reflection on our week, but I want to reflect not so much on the dialogue that has been done, but on the process which made it possible. It was first through leadership. Prof. Peterson, Prof. Corley, without your leadership, without prioritizing internationalization, and without you, Corley, bringing about this enabling environment, we could never have succeeded in this. Also, as an Office for International Affairs, we could have never done it alone. It was through interdivisional collaboration that it was possible to bring this program together. And I really want to thank our internal co-creators. And that is first and foremost the Unit for Institutional Change and Social Justice and Professor Colin Chasey for partnering with us in creating this Africa Week and the Africa Month website. I want to thank the Center for Graduate Support and the Center for Gender and Africa Studies. To just mention a few, it took many more stakeholders, communications, all of them were on board. And actually what I experienced as we did it was a spirit of Ubuntu. That what Colin said on Monday, that really Ubuntu must bring us together. We must all see where we fit in and contribute, where we are because and through others. That is, I think, what we were able to live this week. Let me just acknowledge, and I call them now Mrs. and Mr. Africa Day, Africa Week and Africa Month. Bulelwa and Beki, could you just get up if you are in the room? I see Bulelwa. It was their leadership and hard work, them bringing the whole team together, which made it all happen. It could not have been done without the work of those two fantastic colleagues in our office. Last, I just want to alert you, we also have an Africa Month website. This has been a hybrid celebration. And there you will not only find links to our Africa Day Memorial Lecture, you will not only find recordings of our dialogue, but you will find many thought pieces, many pieces of poetry written by students and colleagues specifically for the Africa Month celebration. And you will find recordings of performing art particularly put together for this celebration, this hybrid celebration of Africa Month. So I just want to close by saying thank you to all of us, because had we not done it together, it could never have happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hagenmeier. I urge everyone here to go to the Africa Month page on the UFS website and just watch the videos of the dialogues that have been had over the 3 campuses over the course of this week. I'm sure that everyone here can take and learn something from that. Thank you very much. We are about to close the program. Becky, should I give over to you or can I just close? I will close. All right, my name is Rebeza Mabine and I was your host for today. Thank you for joining us.